Alright, so before I even start talking, I'm just going to warn you right now that this is definitely going to have a ton of spoilers. I mean, for crying out loud, it's a spoiler discussion. So like we've all been waiting, Avengers Endgame finally came out, and I just saw it last night. And I've only seen it once, I will be seeing it again in a few days, but these are my thoughts based off of one viewing. But that one viewing really had an impact on me. I mean, for crying out loud, I had classes today, and all I could think about were several scenes from this movie. And so I'm sorry to my accounting and healthcare administration class professors, because I was really distracted. This video is not going to be a review per se, because I mean, let's be honest, it was amazing. It was an amazing movie. You guys all know that I liked it. I mean, I'm sure all you guys liked it. If you're watching this video, you must have liked it. And so, like, I'm not going to review it. I more so just want to talk about my favorite parts about it. So I guess, like, you could call that a review, but I'm not going to call it a review. The first thing I want to talk about is the first half of the movie when we see what the world is like post-snap. It is so interesting to see a society where people are still thriving, but at the same time, they're very depressed. Like, they're very aware of the snap, and they're just trying to make the best lives they can. The scene I want to talk about in particular is when Ant-Man wakes up, I should really say when he gets out of the quantum realm. And by the way, speaking of that, can we just, like, praise the rat who accidentally lets him out of the quantum realm? Because if it wasn't for that rat, like, none of this movie would have happened. So the rat's the real hero. Thanks, Mickey. But I loved how when Ant-Man gets out of the quantum realm and he's first seeing the world the way it is, he's very confused. He walks up a hill and he sees just a ginormous memorial site. And there's a bunch of memorial statues, and on it, it's listed all of the people who died from the snap. It's just so interesting to see that community, the way they're handling the snap, how they've created memorials for all those who have died in the snap. And then, of course, we know that he sees his own name. He thinks that everyone else thinks that he's dead, but clearly he's right there. So he runs home. And here's something that I had, like, a little bit of a gripe with. He sees his daughter 5 years later, and, like, Peanut doesn't seem like she should be that old. It seemed like he was looking at, like, an 18, 19-year-old, and I always thought of his daughter as, like, a 5 or 6, 7-year-old. But when I looked up how old she is in real life, I guess she's around 11 or 12. So I guess it makes sense, because that would mean the actress is supposedly like 17 or 18. But still, it was a little weird. Like, she looked a little too old in my opinion. But that's not a gripe, because, like, let's be honest, that doesn't matter at all. And speaking of Ant-Man, I really loved how involved he was in this movie. Without Ant-Man, also, none of this could happen either. And so I think it's really neat that, like, he played such a big role, because I've always really liked Ant-Man. I love the movies. They're so underrated. I feel like not as many people like them as much, and I love them. I think they're great, and so I'm glad that he played such a big role in this movie. It's interesting to see where all the Avengers are 5 years later. Hulk, it's kind of weird looking. Took me a little bit to get used to that. Thor is the one I'm most disappointed with. Before Spider-Man came into the universe, I loved Thor the most. He's been my favorite since the first Thor movie. And so it was kind of a waste of a character in my opinion, but at the same time, I'm not, like, overly sad about it. I wish that at some point in the movie he would have gotten fit again. Like, I thought when he was in Asgard, his mom would have given him some kind of remedy where it'll make him whole again. Or I thought that maybe when he held his hammer, when he held Mjolnir, that he would turn back to his original form. That didn't happen, but it was still interesting to see him. I could have done with a more serious version of him like we usually get, but at the same time, I like that they're switching things up, and so, like, good on them for that. And Captain Marvel's hair 5 years later, I mean, like, okay? Like, what happened there? Like, what happened there? That was a little interesting. Why did she cut her hair? I don't know. It just didn't look good on her. And then this is gonna be a hot topic in a lot of people's videos, I'm sure, but them traveling to old movie scenes was absolutely a blast to watch. The jokes that were said and the cameos that were made, it was just a great time. But there's a particular scene that has lasted with me more than any other scene. That scene is when Black Widow sacrifices herself for the Soul Stone. When they got to the planet, my first thought was, obviously one of them's gonna have to die. I think it's gonna be Barton. And it leads you to believe that it will be Barton, and then they get in this huge fight, and it ends up being Black Widow. The reason this stuck out to me so much was because Black Widow, I feel, is a character that I've never cared for. She's just there. She's just one of those characters that always has her cheesy one-liners, and they're always so corny, especially in Infinity War. I didn't care for her in Infinity War. When I look back on my viewing of Endgame, and then my viewings of Winter Soldier, those were the movies that I liked Black Widow the most, because I feel like you see how vulnerable she is. I feel like you see she's weak in some aspects in both of those films. And so it was interesting to see a different side of her. This movie definitely showed a more vulnerable side to her, where she's grieving over the loss of her friends. She refers to them as family. She's grieving over all their loss, and you see that weaker side of her. And so when it comes down to it, and she sacrifices herself for the better cause, it is just that much more emotional, because she loves them so much, and she's willing to do whatever it takes to bring them back. Speaking of whatever it takes, I love that that's a reoccurring theme in this movie, that each Avenger is willing to do whatever it takes to bring balance to the earth. That is the definition of a real superhero. I mean, for crying out loud, I just got goosebumps just talking about it. But Black Widow says it right before she dies, and then we know that Tony says it, and he ends up passing away as well. And it makes their sacrifice much more substantial and much more heroic as well, that they were willing to do whatever it took to bring balance to the Force. Like my little Star Wars quote there. The writing and the direction was amazing. The fact that they're able to kill off Thanos in the first like 15 minutes and then bring him back, although it's a different Thanos, but it's like the same Thanos. It's just genius. The way the whole entire thing was written. Like right when you think everything's peaceful and everyone's back, the snap is undone. It's all great. And then right away they're attacked by Thanos, and it was like really intense, and I loved it. I love how when the snap is first undone, the first sign of life that we see are from birds. Like it just brought us a very strong feeling of peace back onto the earth, peace that wasn't there, but seeing the birds flying outside simply was that sign of peace, that peace was restored. And then my friend mentioned to me how it's kind of funny how Clint gets a phone call from his wife, because apparently that means he's been paying his dead wife's phone bill for the past 5 years. But it's an emotional scene, so screw the flaws. And then that final just hour where it's that last attack on Avengers headquarters was so just satisfying. And I was thinking when the battle was happening, obviously I was so pumped for the scenes that were about to take place, but I was thinking, what if the movie just cut to credits right as the Avengers start attacking Thanos' army? Like, how freaking disappointed would everyone be? That would be horrible. So many fans would be like just super angry. When all the Avengers come back, it was great to see. The whole theater went crazy for Spider-Man, of course. I mean, he is the best superhero. But yeah, I was super glad to see him back as well. When Captain America delivers the line Avengers Assemble, I mean, yes, it was cheesy, but boy did we need it, because it was so cool to see and hear him say that. And I love how when he says Avengers Assemble, that title of the Avengers, it applies to the whole army. Like even the folks from Wakanda and even the wizards, all of them are an Avenger. And it just made the whole entire battle that much more personal, and it also added more unity with all of them. So that was really cool. There's a few cons I had with the movie. Obviously, Captain Marvel's hair was my biggest con. Another con I had was when Spider-Man has the gauntlet and Captain Marvel comes to him to help him out, and then suddenly all the girl Avengers team up together to get rid of Thanos' army. Like, come on, you know they're just making a statement, some kind of feminist statement. I just think it's stupid when they throw it in our faces, and those were some of the problems I had with the movie Captain Marvel, when it plays I'm Just a Girl by Gwen Stefani as she's beating everyone up. Like, you know they're just trying to make a statement, and that's just unnecessary in my opinion. Let's just watch a movie where they all fight. It was dumb to me. It just doesn't make sense for that to take place in a war setting. Like, Iron Man or Captain America is not going to say, all right, all you women fighter, go over there, help Spider-Man. It's more going to be a thing where every man for himself, let's all attack together. And so it was just a cheesy scene to me where all of them come together and they have girl power, blah, 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 blah. I think this movie's equivalent to Thor arriving in Wakanda back in Avengers Infinity War was definitely the scene when Captain America is able to hold Mjolnir. That was so freaking sick. When you hear Thor say, I knew it all along, that like he was worthy to bear the hammer, it was so sweet. And then the lightning comes and Thanos gets his butt kicked for a solid like minute or two. It was great. The theater was going nuts. People were exploding. It was amazing. So that whole entire scene was just great. And I find it funny how both this franchise, which is 10, 11 years in the making, and the Harry Potter franchise, which is 10, 11 years in the making, both end with the main villain fading away into dust. Don't know what that means, but I like it. They wrap up the series in a very great manner. The ending to each character's story is perfect, where it gives room for some characters to be developed more in the future, including Thor. Like, we might see more of him in the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. But it also adds closure to characters like Captain America and Iron Man. Iron Man's funeral was obviously very emotional, and I loved all the people that it showed in attendance there. One of the guests at his funeral that stood out to me most was Harley from Iron Man 3, the kid that he helps out, and the kid helps him out with his suit and everything. I just thought it was really cool. Like, it's just another one of those little things that ties the whole entire MCU franchise together. A random character from Iron Man 3, a movie that like not even too many people remember at this point, is at his funeral. That was awesome. And he was all grown up, so it was just cool to see his support for Iron Man. And it was cool to see that Iron Man made an impact in that kid's life. Iron Man's death was hard. It was very hard to accept. Like, I had a feeling that it was coming, but what's so hard is it comes back to that same thing I was saying earlier with Black Widow and Iron Man, both of them having the attitude of whatever it takes. Iron Man knew the only way to save the world was to sacrifice his life. So that's just very heroic. Like, I don't think it gets much more heroic than that. It was amazing. Like, his last act was heroism. And it's cool because he starts out as such a arrogant character. And of course, like, there's still some arrogance in him. But in the end, he is a hero. And I better stop talking about it because I'm gonna cry. I'm excited for where the MCU is heading from here. I have a lot of theories and some predictions for where they might go. Like, for an example, the scene where Loki escapes with a space stone in the Avengers 2012 setting. I think they're definitely going to play on that in the Loki TV series on Disney+. I hope they do, at least. Like, that's a perfect opportunity to have a great plot right there. I also kind of wonder if they'll look at different timelines that are possible on Disney Plus series, if they'll mess with those. Like, I wonder if the Falcon and Winter Soldier TV show will now be Captain America and Winter Soldier, which is kind of funny because that's the name of the movie, Captain America Winter Soldier. But anyways, it'll be interesting to see if they change the title to that. I'm not going to post a ranking just yet because technically there is one more movie in the franchise. We've got Spider-Man Far From Home coming out in July. So at that time, I will post a ranking of all 23 movies ranked. Plus, I feel like that'll give me more time to know where this fits in my ranking. I will tell you though that this is definitely in the top 2, top 3. It's definitely up there. I absolutely loved it. Possibly my number 1, but I want to think about it more because I know that the hype is real. I'll see it again, give it a few months, and my ranking will be out in July. One last thing I wanted to say was how great was that tribute at the end where you just see all the cast in the credits, and how great was that final lineup at the end where you see the 6 main Avengers. You see Hawkeye, Black Widow, Hulk, Thor, Captain America, Iron Man, with their signatures, with their characters. I like how they spent more time on those characters. It was so neat. And I think it's so cool how in real life the actors have gotten tattoos together. Not all of them, but the majority of the original Avengers got tattoos, matching tattoos, I believe, with each other. And it shows that, like, the fans aren't the only ones who appreciate this series. Like, the actors clearly appreciate it as well. And so seeing that tribute at the end was amazing. We didn't get a post-credit scene, but come on, do we really need one? If anything, I think this was a good movie to not have one because it ends everything on such a good note. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what your thoughts were on Endgame, and I'll see you later.